Krakowskim. Dzień dobry, witam Państwa serdecznie na 60. Krakowskim Festiwalu Filmowym. Jesteśmy w tym roku online. Wszystkie projekcje można oglądać w internecie na naszej stronie internetowej. Witam Cię, Krzysztofie, serdecznie. Krzysztof Kwiatkowski, który za chwilkę poprowadzi dla Państwa spotkanie z reżyserem filmu Acasa, mój dom, Radu Ciurnaliciem.
Dzień dobry, Basiu.
Dzień dobry, cześć Krzysztofie.
Dzień dobry.
Hello, Radu, dzień dobry. How are you?
I'm good, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for accepting our invitation for the competition with your film, amazing film. And I hope that you will have a very interesting conversation. So stay with us, please. And Krzysztof, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Krzysztof.
So once again, hello, Radu, and it's great to have you here. First, I would like to say to all the viewers that please remember that you can comment, you can ask questions, you can comment the film, you can comment the conversation, you can write what bothers you. We'll try to help. But first of all, Radu, I'm wondering, the film about people who feel trapped at home suddenly became very up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some weird times we're living in right now. Obviously, yeah, we're. I mean, one of the things that's struck us the most. It's been going on for a while, but obviously we've made a film about it. But now that more than ever, we've realized that how vulnerable and disconnected we are. Living in big cities, which are supposed to be safe nets for us, giving us a lot of comfort and a lot of opportunities. But one day there's this invisible tiny enemy that comes and shows us that what we've built and what we fought for hundreds of years can be destroyed and can be torn down in a matter of days. So again, we're like my family and myself. We're reconsidering, like a lot of our friends, reconsidering, like going a bit slowly, going a bit back to nature, and not be so dependent on our lives, on a comfortable life in the big city. Yeah,
because your protagonists, in the city, they live together, they have all the cell phones, they have everything, but suddenly, without nature, they lose a sense of community.
Absolutely, and it's so much more than the sense of community. I mean, one of the hardest things in this research, which took for more than almost 4 years, was after 2 years I spent with them in the nature, in the park. Every day after I finished, I was finishing the filming and going back home just to review the footage and write a bit more on the story and develop it. I was looking at the footage with the children and the parents in the apartment, which is supposed to be more civilized, and I was so heartbroken that the magic around them was slowly disappearing as they were integrating in the city life. So that was the hardest thing I've came across during this during this research, during this film, seeing them getting lost in the crowd, see their magic disappearing.
Because now it's the film about this, about them moving, about them changing their lifestyle, their everyday culture, and also about a lot of social problems surrounding it. But you had to, I mean, you got to know them before they knew that they are moving.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. No, we spent around 1.5 years together before they were moving. I mean, this whole film started as a like we wanted to make a reportage um, about the area, basically, because the area was and it still is a vast green land almost in the middle of the city, and for 20 years it was just a garbage dump. I mean, the whole margins of the place, the concrete wall, they were all covered in garbage, and it was very inaccessible for people to go inside, and quite dangerous as well. So one of the reasons nature took over the place and transformed it into what's today. There are hundreds of species of birds and animals and plants and so on, and nobody knew about this. So it was really interesting for us. I mean, we're long form reporters and non-fiction writers. So we wanted to go there and see, like, what's going to happen with this place, now that it is discovered. Like, what are the authorities going to do with it? They were about to give it one of the most important protection statuses in the country, like the virgin forests in the Carpathians had this protection status of a natural reservation. And this reportage slowly transformed into a film, but this happened when we met the family, and when we were fascinated by how by the strong bond between the family members. And last but not least, and it was the most amazing thing that I've came across in my research, is like seeing these little boys having such a special connection with nature. And the things that were happening in front of our eyes were so strong and so profound and so so meaningful, that a reportage wouldn't have done justice to those feelings that we were getting from these kids and this family. And so we spent because Romanian bureaucracy is slowly is its own enemy, is the country's own enemy. It took almost.
I saw it in films of Romanian New Wave. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So it took them like almost 2 years to.
I want to interrupt you because it's even more interesting knowing that the father is someone who used to live life which we call a regular life and had normal city job, and he chose to raise his family and his children there in place which we would call the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. In the middle of nowhere, a few hundred meters from the city center. Yeah, the father was a laborant, like a chemist. He was working in a laboratory in the communist time. But when Ceausescu fell, and there was this whole gray period in the lives of all Romanians in the 90s, and it was similar in all Eastern Europe, but some countries had it worse than others, and Romania was among them. So in those times, like the father lost his job because the factory closed, and I mean, every time I ask him, he gives me a different version of it. But what I know for sure is that he suffered very. Although he wants to be to be perceived as a very tough guy, as a patriarch, he's a really, really soft kitten. Like he's a very sensitive human being. So I think he had it very bad. He spent like a couple of months in prison in the 90s. Every time I ask, is a different reason for why he was in prison. So I don't know the final version. That's why I didn't include it in the film. But I think he had a severe trauma in those couple of months. And when he got out, he didn't want to have to do anything with the city, with the city people, with it. So he was very, very disappointed by everyone and everything. And it was his decision because he grew up in the countryside, and he knew a lot of he had this this. I mean, the father is quite a character. He had such a popular understanding of the ecosystems of the let's say natural world. He knew, and he passed it on to his oldest son, to Vali. He knew everything from, like, if you remove if you remove a branch, let's say, that's falling in a lake, and how would that action affect the ecosystem, those types of fish and those types of birds and those types of squirrels, whatever. He had this very unique way of understanding nature, and he got it from when he was young. So anyway,
and this is incredible that he passed this to next generation, and also this this connection with nature. But what I like in your film, that there's a big ambiguity then, because it's not the only thing that he passed. He passed also this trauma of his. I mean, because in a way, children, his children, which who are in very different ages, but in a way, they don't belong anywhere, because it's difficult to think of them as people who will live there for all their lives in this reserve. And on the other hand, they are completely, because it seems too easy to say that they felt free in the nature, and suddenly they were forced, because they were also granted, for example, school, better hygiene, environment.
Absolutely. And this is I mean, obviously, there was this ambiguity since day one. I was seeing happy kids that they were very careful with each other and loving towards their parents and them, like their brothers. But I was seeing them in like half naked in mud, and with no access to. They didn't even have papers, like documents. They were like social ghosts. So I really wanted to include this. I mean, to have a film that walks on this gray, like thread of between our own perception and constantly between our own perception and the things that could how to say in English, that are in contrast, like, or in balance with what we think that's good for us or for the world or for other people. So and our editor Andrei Gorgan did a fine job with this. We've edited for 2 years, and again, one of the aims was to remove ourselves and our ideas of society and of what's best or what's not good for people, to remove it from the film and just let this family go through this dramatic adventure by themselves, in order to make us understand more about their journey, about themselves as human beings, and so on. So, and I think it's the least patronizing way of telling a story.
That's true, and you kept it. But my question is also, if you said that you wanted to remove your perceptions and your what you thought
as
about
much as I could,
the society, as much as you could, obviously. But with being a companion to their journey, I'm wondering, did you yourself look at society, at modern way of living differently, thanks to them and their perception?
Well, thanks a lot for asking this question.
For example, surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a reporter for almost 10 years, and I had a special interest in marginalized communities, in discrimination. So I've researched a lot on this, and I wrote a lot about communities like this. But what I've learned in these 4 years, like, that I spent with the family, was on so many levels more more profound and more meaningful than what I've learned through my, let's say, like reporters endeavors. Uh, it's not like, like, it's not easy. It's as adults, as human beings, we always have to make compromises, right? I mean, I have a young daughter right now. She's almost a year old, and I don't want to see her like live so far away from a hospital or a school. I want her to know how to read and write when she's I don't know, like she's a bit older. I want her to be seen by a doctor. I want her to, have what we call them a decent life. But again, I want a child that's not disconnected from the earth she's walking, or from the plants, or that's feeding her, or the air that keeps her breathing. So I want her in touch with all these things. So it's I think one of the biggest lessons was this, like you have to fine tune your life until you find the perfect compromise. Let's say, like you give something, you give a piece from yourself in order to get a piece from the like from the world around you.
And it's also not enough to say that that's between nature and civilization or culture, because there is this third thing, the society. For me, when I started watching your film, at the beginning, when they are waiting for social service to come, I had this first thought that those are children who are taught from the very early age the mistrust to society, the mistrust to institutions, which is the thing actually I think about a lot last months, because we are the same generation, and we saw this whole process of building new institutions in our countries, this respect for law, and suddenly now we see also the governments which somehow destroy the whole, I would say, exactly, respect for institutions and institutions. So I had this feeling that here there is one more generation who will not believe in what we wanted so much.
Yeah, and thanks for pointing this out, because the main character of the film, although not traditional, is a Roma family, and I know from the experiences that they had even before moving into the city, like it's so degrading to. I mean, first of all, the children, the smaller ones, when they got into the city, they were being called you bloody gypsy, you dirty gypsy, and so on. They didn't know they're gypsies, so they had their first shock. And I wrote about like racism, and we've always pointed that out, but we've never, until sticking with this family for so long, we've never seen it so close to us like a white privileged young people in privilege, whites in Romania, majority. So
even when social worker says that, I'm not intolerant, I have in my mind, if you have need of saying this, then she said I'm not a racist, and I was thinking, like, if you have a need to say it,
then
there's something about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the least form of that's the most minor form of racism that the family suffered in all these years, and I've seen them in hospitals, for example, being shushed away because they were funny looking, or so imagine. Of course, there's a mistrust at the point that the father didn't want to make them documents. He didn't want to have anything to do with these authorities. But like, there's a serious black thing to, like, this bad part of the story, but on the positive side, I mean, Acasa is also a social project. So we've employed a lot of professionals from our generation, mostly like doctors and psychologists and educators and so on. So we've built this, let's say, new method of social integration for the family. And after so long that, I mean, apart from the fact that the kids go to school and they would get medical screenings every 3 months, and they were well taken care of. Apart from that, they started to have trust in other people as well, slowly, by seeing, seeing a person that was truly interested in their lives and and being interested in their persons. Made a huge difference, up until the point that the kids are so relaxed now and so so communicative and everything, and they changed a lot, but and they lost a lot, but they also gained a lot more, I would say, a lot more. Anyway, and now the family is yeah. I just wanted to mention, yeah, please. No. So this whole social project, in short, we've also published a book, and we sold it nationwide, and it gathered the necessary money to fund the whole social project, and it also gave us the possibility of buying a piece of land and a house for the family. So I always say that at the beginning of a film, at the introduction of the film, like, there's a happier ending in the Q&A, so stick with us. And this is the happier ending, because now they have their names on a piece of paper and nobody can kick them out, and this is a fear, and it was very well, very, very good observation from you.
Because it's not only about money, but also about dignity.
Absolutely, yeah. Firstly, it's about dignity. Absolutely. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, as I mentioned, we've just got the question from the viewer, but we're speaking about the trust, so it suits here very well, because Eve asks, how did you get them to trust you and behave so naturally around you and your fancy modern equipment?
Well, thanks for asking that, because at the beginning we started this film by doing interviews, like a lot of interviews, and then we decided to go for something that would take us a lot more time and would actually force us to be a bit closer as human beings to the protagonist. So as part of this cinematic approach, we wanted the camera to give you the feeling that it's part of the pack. It's one small brother that's always like playing around, or like being like witnessing things from a family member's point of view. So by choosing to do this, we did all sorts of. In short, it's like in every human relationship, you give something from yourself and you get something back. So in time, we became quite close friends, and those interviews that were filmed slowly transformed into a conversation that we were having, and we were discovering things about ourselves, and the more we communicated, the less circumspect, is that a word? The less suspicious they were of my intention. On one hand, and the other hand, the more I knew about them, and the more I knew about like their inner and their outer lives, and the more I could focus on on shooting, for example. For example, one intense scene is when the older brother confronts the father, and they start fighting. Like he's an adolescent, he's a father that's losing his authority. So anyway, so I knew of that conflict that was happening for some months now, and because they were both talking to me. The father was calling me like, Rado, you need to talk with Vali. He's going nuts. He's he's gonna become a bum and whatever. And the Vali was calling me, like, and saying that his father is going crazy and he's he's losing his mind. So in time I became some sort of like family mediator, and the camera as well. So I was just saying, like, look, guys, you need to talk with each other. You need to like say the things that you're telling me, like, to each other. So why don't you sit down and start having a conversation? So it became an exercise we've been doing for more than a year, and it got the film this feeling of intimacy and this feeling of trust, basically, because the relationship was a bit more than a director and characters, or it was a relationship between friends. And this relationship was cultivated as every relationship is cultivated. Again, you give some to the person next to you and you get some back. So this grows.
I would like to believe in it, that there is no, that then it will not tear apart because of some small thing and small misunderstanding.
Well, this is also like part of it. No, but we're in good terms. Thank God.
Yeah, but it's incredible because it's true that, especially as you told us about the project also, and all the also money raising, and also the book, it seems that with this project you achieved so much, because also you created film which is important socially, but also it's beautiful piece of cinematic piece of art, and very intimate. But I'm wondering, you stressed several times that you have journalists and yes, you have background of reportage and journalism. I'm wondering, is it now, in our media landscape, which is difficult because media are more and more poor, they are more and more quick, they want to be more and more quick. Some, public, for example, in Poland, there's problem because some public broadcasters are politics try to influence it, and generally, the media are getting weaker and weaker. Do you think that in this environment, documentary filmmaking becomes the natural way to have somehow speak about the world and save this type of in-depth journalism?
Well, I always thought that in-depth journalism is complementary to news journalism, or even when I say in-depth journalism, I'm thinking of narrative journalists as well as investigations, because I've been doing, my background is as a non-fiction writer, but also as a hard investigative journalism and so on. And I have a huge amount of respect for the journalistic work, and for its ability to treat emergencies as emergency. As a documentary, you can't spend 4 years with a story about people being killed by the police in the US, for example, and say the story after 4 years, right? You can't do that. So it's a complementary. You can't, you need that information to be treated as an emergency for the public to know, and to to be aware of the things that are happening around it. But you need the documentaries that will come like after this whole conflict will be finished. You need the documentaries to come back and give you a bit more context, give you a bit more understanding from a contextual point of view, but also from a human point of view, so that I think in many ways documentaries are making very rich summaries of the events in our lives. So
Yeah,
again,
'cause
I think it's a complementary work, and of course they both
Mm.
save each other. They need to go together, you know, like on their, you know, like on their
Yeah, hand by
fronts.
hand.
And one thing that bothers me like a lot, I see a lot of you know, like I see a lot of documentaries of like filmmakers looking down or artists looking down on journalists, you know, and this is always bothering me because, you know, like I come from the first line of investigative journalists. In my 20s, I was doing undercovers, even in Poland, in factories, exposing modern day slavery and so on. So I know that I know that I can't spend 4 years. I can't afford to stay 4 years with an information that could save a community or that could make the lives better for a community tomorrow. You know.
No, but I'm always also saying that, for example, in Poland, every office, every outlet, and every newspaper and magazine, they want to have quality reportages and quality investigative journalism, but they forget how expensive it is. I mean, you can't have good
Exactly.
investigative journalism without money, and that's why I'm saying that suddenly I see people for this. It's the same. I don't know if you know Jan Gebert from Czech Republic.
Yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
He also was a journalist and reporter, and also switched to documentary filmmaking. So I'm saying that maybe that's the way to somehow also documentaries start to play this role, which partly was also played by media.
Yeah. But I guess it's a natural shift for a lot of professionals that work in the media and understand the minuses there and are becoming frustrated because it's about the money, of course. Not every outlet affords to invest into, you know, like in-depth researches, but it's also about the format. For example, what made me do this film, what made me do Acasa, was 8 years of traveling as an investigative journalist for, you know, like The Guardian or Channel 4 News or Al Jazeera. And I would spend like a year on a story. I was really invested in it. And I was seeing, for example, I was filming and I was seeing shots that for me were like, this shot explains the whole world. This shot shows us the whole story, you know. And when I was going back to the newsroom and, you know, like working with the editor and with the lawyers, of course, because there's this rigidity of, you know, like of working in a big trust. I was, you know, like almost all the time the footage I was most fond of didn't make it on the screen. So this grew a lot of frustration in me as a, you know, creator of whatever, of images, or like as a storyteller. So in time, you know, I've saved the money. I bought the fancy equipment, and I saved that equipment for when I was ready to embark on a journey of making a feature-length film. Because I was aware of how much time and resources and money as well, you know, like that takes. So it took me, like, if you ask me, the research I started working on this film 10 years ago. So even though I didn't know what story I was going to tell, I wanted to make this shift because, again, there was a lot of frustrations. Beginning, you know, with the format, I wasn't very happy about it most of the times. And anyway, yeah. But that's interesting.
But
That's
I'm
an
very
interesting
happy.
conversation. Thanks for bringing that up.
I mean, you know, I'm feeling as a journalist also, you know, but I don't want to start this traditional journalist talk about how bad it's going to be. And it's getting, actually. So I'm very glad that you decided to do this film and presented it to us.
Thank
And
you.
For being here with us, online, but but together. And well, I'm very interesting to see, hopefully in less than 10 years, what you think about the world, about the post-pandemic world on screen.
We're already working on something there, so so hopefully in less than 10 years, but yeah, good.
Okay, so thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Christoph. It was a real pleasure, and thank you everyone for watching the film, and thank you everyone at the festival for making this possible. And without you guys, a lot of the filmmakers would be dead. Some, like some not metaphorically. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Bye.